All right, we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Pat Kane, Public Programs Visitor Services Coordinator at the Museum of the Grand Prairie. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here tonight for another event in our special exhibit speaker series and our 14th annual Lincoln Lecture Series. I want to especially thank tonight's guest, Marlene Rivero, for joining us tonight to help tell the story of African American Civil War nurse Anne Bradford Stokes. And we will bring her on in just a few moments, the star of the show tonight. Before we get into tonight's program, I did want to go over a few housekeeping items, thank some folks, and let you know about what's coming up with us at the Museum of the Grand Prairie. First and foremost, let us know where you're watching from tonight by writing it down in the comments section below. Got a few people tuning in already. Stacy and Jeff, good friends. Thanks for tuning in. Allie, also a good friend, and my mom is tuning in. Hey, Mom. Thanks for tuning in tonight, but we would love to know where you're watching from. I'm streaming live from my home here in Champaign, Illinois. And Marlene, Ms. Bradford Stokes, will be joining us tonight from Grand Chain, Illinois, all the way down in southern Illinois. Okay, so also another thing you could do is share the stream. Click that share button on your screen so you can watch alongside your friends so you can have as much fun as humanly possible. A little bit about the museum, Museum of the Grand Prairie. We've been been operating since 1968. Opened originally as the Early American Museum, and our current mission is to collect, preserve, and interpret the cultural and natural history of Champaign County and East Central Illinois. We're also part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, a collection of 6 beautiful forest preserves right here in Central Illinois in Champaign County. Also have some educational facilities like our museum, also the Homer Lake Interpretive Center. Forest Preserve District also includes Lake of the Woods Golf Course and Kickapoo Rail Trail. So please, today was a beautiful day to get out and explore the forest preserves. But if you haven't in a while, or if you've never been there before, get out and explore a Champaign County Forest Preserve here in Central Illinois. Tonight's program is tied to our special exhibit that we unveiled earlier in the year. The exhibit's titled "How Long Must Women Wait? Women's Suffrage and Women's Rights in Champaign County." To help commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment's ratification, this exhibit explores the women's suffrage movement locally and nationally as only one landmark in a long continuing struggle for women and other marginalized people to claim an equal role in society. If you haven't had the opportunity to view it, unfortunately, we're closed to the public. We had to close earlier this month due to state of Illinois regulations, closing all museums. But you are able to visit the exhibit virtually. So go to our YouTube page or our Facebook page where there's some awesome virtual tours where our director, who led us through the exhibit, gives a nice virtual tour of the exhibit space. So check that out on our YouTube or Facebook page. We at the Museum and Forest Preserve District would like to thank Illinois Humanities for partnering with us to host tonight's program as part of their Rhodes Scholars Speakers Bureau. Illinois Humanities would also like to thank you for taking part in this event tonight. The mission of Illinois Humanities is to strengthen the social, political, and economic fabric of Illinois through constructive conversation and civic engagement. Their Rhodes Scholar Speakers Bureau supports that mission by inviting Illinois authors, artists, and scholars to share their expertise and enthusiasm with people and communities throughout our state. After this event, we hope you'll complete the feedback survey, which will help us as we plan future programs and seek support for our work. To learn more about other Rhodes Scholars presentations or other programs or grant opportunities with Illinois Humanities, please visit www.ilhumanities.org. Thanks again to Illinois Humanities, and I'm going to go ahead and post a link to that survey now, and I will also post a link to that survey at the very end of tonight's presentation, just to remind you to complete that survey. All right, so I posted that in the comment section on Facebook and on YouTube, wherever you may be watching. So please complete that survey Illinois Humanities would greatly appreciate it, and they take their feedback very, very seriously. Just click on that link, follow that form, click the submit button, and you're good to go. Wouldn't take you any more than 5 minutes. This special exhibit speaker series is also made possible with support from independent donors, as well as the following women-owned and/or women-led businesses and organizations. They include Campfire Concepts, ShambanaMoms.com, 5 Foot Productions, Youth and Associates LLC, Jesse Marie Studio LLC, the McGuire Home Collection, Organizing CU, Page Roasting Company, Simply Anchored Boutique, and the Right Start Preschool. Please be sure to visit these local businesses if they have open hours, or visit their websites and try to find a way to support these great people who are helping support this awesome speaker series that we've been doing all year long since this exhibit has been up. One other event I did want to promote that's coming up with the Museum of the Grand Prairie is an event that's going to be happening on Thursday, January 28th at 7 o'clock. Again, right here on our YouTube and Facebook pages live, where our director of the Museum and Education Department, Barb Garvey, is going to take you on a virtual house tour. She's going to highlight 19 places in Champaign County that once were the province prominent local suffragists while discussing their contribution to the movement and to the community. We're also going to provide a downloadable PDF brochure that at your leisure, you can visit these homes and see where these local ladies who shook and moved this county lived. Again, that program is going to be on Thursday, January 28th, and it is titled 19 Suffragists, 19 Historic Homes. Please be sure to join us for that virtual house tour. All right, and now enough of me talking. I am pleased to introduce to you Ms. Ann Bradford Stokes. So I'm going to bring her on here, and welcome, welcome, Ms. Ann Bradford Stokes. I appreciate you joining us. And I did want to real quick. I've got a little bit to introduce about the woman behind Ann Bradford Stokes, Marlene Rivero. Marlene is born and raised in Grand Chain of Southern Illinois. She worked professionally for 31 years with the United States Forest Service until retirement in 2011. Rivero's art celebrates many Americans' life-changing events by combining her unique abilities using various forms of the arts to help bring them to life using storyline, song, and visual representation. She believes that sharing behind-the-scenes stories of voiceless African Americans' lifeways helps to remember their participation in life-changing events, much like Ms. Stokes tonight. Rivero hopes her work will make the world a better place by using her art forms and abilities. So it's my great honor to introduce to you Ms. Ann Bradford Stokes. Let's give her a warm virtual welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited about the program this afternoon. As Ann Stokes, I created a short video so that to introduce you to Ann, and then after the short video, I think it's around 16 minutes, we will come back and I will continue to talk a little bit more, being live. And after that, we will go into a few question and answers that hopefully you, the participants, will send a question out to me, and we can discuss Ann a little bit more.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And as Marlene just said, I am going to start that video so we can learn a little bit about the story of Ms. Ann Bradford Stokes. So let's go to Ms. Ann Bradford Stokes right now.
Yes. Good morning. You are with the, you say that I am required down at the Red Rover. Let me finish up here and I will be on down in about an hour. You say there is a committee ready to question me. Okay, in 1 hour, I'll be there. Yes, we shall be free. Yes, we shall be free. Yes, we shall be free. The Lord shall appear. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to come and to tell of my whereabouts for the last month or so. I am a ex-slave from the Bradford Plantation down in Rutherford County, Tennessee. I understand you want me to tell you whether my work above the Red Rover was worthy of the the time that I spent above. Well, before I tell you about my service, I would like to tell you a little bit about how I came out of slavery. We had heard that the Federals were north of the Bradford Plantation and that the missus was going to have some of the slaves to load her possessions on a wagon, and that uh, one of the slaves was going to be her driver. The wagon was loaded and her children, and they were headed a little bit further south to a refugee camp. But they also said that she may be able to go on and stay with some relatives that was a little further south in that same area. Well, in the quarters, we were trying to make up our mind whether we were going to continue to work, work with the overseer and stay on the plantation or whether we were going to run. If we decided to run, that meant that if we got caught, that we could be severely punished, or worse. I thought, I decided, well, I was going to run because didn't have any children, and I had been uh, helping some of the older women when the children were born on the plantation. I would help to deliver babies. I decided I didn't have no reason to stay. So I put together a little ditty bag and with salt pork and corn poles. We started, we were running. We ran along the Tennessee River and the Cumberland. We would see some of the rebels, or when we got a little further north, we ran in some of the Federals. The Federals asked us where the rebels were located. Sometimes they would take what we had in our little ditty belt. When we got just a little bit north of the mouth of the Duck River, the ironclad let us on board. Oh, we were called some of any kind of names that you could think of. But the name that we liked the best was Contraband. When we got aboard an ironclad and it took us on up the Cumberland River and it emptied out there at a place called Paducah, Kentucky. We knew that if the Cumberland emptied into the Ohio River, that if we went to the east, that we would still be going north. But the ironclad turned and went south. It went by a fort called Fort Massac. And then it kept going, and then the hull of the ship hit rocks. They call that the chain of rocks. And it was headed on south. And we knew that if we got down to a place called Cairo or Fort Defiance, that we would be on the south side of the Mason-Dixie line. But our ironclad stopped. It was in the evening of December of 1862. Oh, when we got off that ship, they fed us some beans and corn pone. They told us if we went on down to Diamond Street, we could find a place to live. All we had on our backs was the clothing that we wore off that plantation. Yeah. We had food for that evening. We didn't own a plow. We didn't own a piece of land. Everything, even the clothes on our backs, still belonged to the masters that was in the sun. But as they were taking us down to Diamond Street to stay in this little shanty, and the soil was froze and it was sticking, and the grass that they had gathered for us to uh, put what we could over it was sticking through. Yeah. We looked up through the cracks in the roof and we could see the stars. We were worried about where we were going to get our next meal. Well, they said that uh, there were some sisters that were sent from the Sanitary Commission from the Notre Dame of Indiana that had answered the call of President Abraham Lincoln to come help with the care of the wounded and sick soldiers. They said they were looking for women that uh, knew how to handle the midwifery on the plantation. And I had learned from some of the older women how to be a midwife. We went down and they told us that once we decided to sign up, that we could be a laundress or first class boy or coal heaver, whatever was needed. We could volunteer, and we decided, well, yeah, I'm gonna go on down there and I'm gonna volunteer. At least I get me some food so that I can eat. But when we got down to the Red Rover and Sergeant Bixby, they hired me as a nurse. I was to be paid $8 a month. But I never worked one day as a laundress or first class boy. I worked as a nurse. Well, Sister Valencia and Valencia and Sister St. Joe, they taught us how to do our reverses. They taught us how to clean behind the soldiers. Because when we first went above the Red Rover, it was clean as it could be. And we learned from the sisters. And the sisters, they would have a pad and they would write down what they told us to do. But we did not know how to read or write. We did not know how to read or write, so we had to remember everything in our mind. Whatever they told us, we had to remember it. And we went to work. We rolled our sleeves up. We got aboard the Red Rover and we went back up to Paducah and we picked up some of the soldiers and brought them back to the Marine Way Hospital. We loaded the Red Rover with all kinds of supplies and we were going to go a little bit further south towards the end of January of 1863. We had already heard that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed on January 1st of 1863, and that the president had said that any state that had seceded from the Union, every slave in that state would be free on January 1st. So that meant that I was free now that January 1st had gone by. Yes. And the Red Rover had taken on its supplies and was headed on to the south. General Grant had already been in Mound City and Carroll and had taken his army and headed south. And he had taken his men to prepare for fighting. And in February, he started to gather these men and get prepared to try to take Vicksburg. We went down to Fort Hyman, and the Red Rover parked there at the mouth of the White River. And just as we were getting ready to leave, and we soldiers, the army had taken Fort Hyman. The bombs and went off and went into the kitchen and into the soldiers' quarter where we were taking care of them. It didn't hurt nobody. But the ball had went through and we fixed it. And we took these injured soldiers back up the mountain. We again supplied the ship, loaded the ship with supplies. And we headed back south. This is how it was when we first started Red Rover. And we continue to Can you?
Yes. Well, that was great, Ms. Stokes. Really appreciate that. And
Well,
sure.
I would like to pick it up
Go
there
for it.
and just let you know that after the Red Rover had the shot to go through the ship at the mouth of the White River, she continued on south through the spring of 1863. Well, in June of early June of 1863, the Red Rover and Anne and the other contraband women and men, there was approximately 50 staff above the Red Rover. And there were like 2-to-1 contraband to the Navy medical staff. She was there just outside of a place in the northern part of Louisiana, about 15 miles above Vicksburg. Grant had already taken his army and was marching to the south, trying to find a way below Vicksburg. And this place called Milliken's Bend, it had soldiers that had just volunteered. They had been given muskets that were ill-equipped and they were not firing like they should. They had bayonets at the end of the rifles, and the rebels came across from Mississippi over into Louisiana, and they thought they would be able to take Fort Milliken's Bend. And the soldiers, they were newly volunteer recruits. They fought, and the wee hours of the morning, they started fighting. They had the Mississippi on the east, and they had levees and bayous on the west before they got to open fields. They were able to fire their muskets, and then the gun wouldn't work anymore. Well, I would go in behind the fighting along with other contraband. And some of the other contraband that I was really familiar with was like Maddie Perkins and Ann Graves and Gilbert Stokes, Mary Warfield, and Margaret Jackson. They were all my sisters and brothers, going behind to pick up the injured and load them up on a wagon, which was later called an ambulance. And sometimes the wagons would get mired down with the mules trying to pull the wagon filled with the injured soldiers to the bank to be put aboard the Red Rover. When we went to pick up these young men that had been fighting to the bitter end, a baronet from a rebel would be going into one of the contraband volunteers and the contraband, and they both would have taken each other out. It was some of the most horrible scenes that you would have ever seen in your life. But we were proud of the men that served, because once you decided to run and to become a volunteer for the Union, once you decided that you were going to serve and leave the South, the outcome was severe for you, because the Confederate would catch you, and if you were thrown into prison, like at Andersonville that we heard about, then they would be killed anyway. So when you decided to run, you took your life in your own hands. And it was better to fight standing than to be killed anyway. We, Contraband, would go out and collect these sick boys and men. We would also go looking for food. We would go gather all kinds of food that we could find on the different plantations. We would take what was needed. Well, sometimes our supplies ran out, and the Battle of Vicksburg was really getting strong. And we needed more supplies, and when they decided that we were going to go on down to Louisiana, at the cover of night, the Red Rover was 3 stories. 3 stories. On this ship, there was an elevator, and there was 3 bathrooms, and there was ice closet. We could carry 300 tons of ice at one time. But we didn't have anything. So at the cover of darkness, we floated right on past Vicksburg. We made it down to Louisiana and came all the way back. And when we got back, we sailed by Vicksburg again, and the Red Rover parked there at the mouth of the Yazoo River. The Yazoo River, the water was so murky and black. If you get a drop in it, you would get dysentery or fever. We saw so many of the young men die, some of the best. And when we had to go into the field to collect the young men after a battle, sometimes we would take the very strongest, the less injured. Other times we would take the most severe injured. And if we couldn't make it back to the river's edge, we would go to a field hospital where the surgeons had a tent set up, and the limbs would be amputated. And my job was to help keep the surgeon's kit clean and sanitary. We would have quinine powder. We would put 1 spoon of the powder stuff down one soldier's mouth and take that same spoon and use it on another. And then once we got them patched up good enough, we would put them as deep as we could on a wagon. And sometimes the roads would be so miry, and we would have to get out and push that wagon so that the mules could pull it over to the river's edge. But as we lost some of the soldiers, we had a a barge that we towed and that we tied to the edge of the bank in the shade. War is not pretty. War is not pretty. On that barge, we put the soldiers that were dying of smallpox, chickenpox, legs and arms had been amputated, and they lost their lives. And as we would go back north, sometime we would go up to Hospital Pinckney at Memphis, Tennessee. And sometime we would tow that barge all the way back to Mound City, and we would bury these soldiers to the north of Mound City. We kept working and working, day in and day out. Sometimes those young boys would get into the water, and their legs and their ankles would swell up so bad, and they would get what you call trench foot. Yes. That was bad. I remember one young man, I had taken some quinine pill with some water and rubbed him down real good and put his medicine over on a stand so he could reach it to be able to apply the ointment to himself. And when he was reaching for it, he fell out of the bed. But when he fell out of the bed, the swelling in the leg burst open. And that really saved his life because all of the pus came out. That reminds me, you may think that flies is a bad thing, but it's not. Once you wrap an injury or an amputated limb and the flies lay their larvae, then they would clean out that injury. We learned that over time. Well, in 1864, I had been working long hours for many days. It was about a month before the soldiers came to get me. And the soldiers told me that I was needed down on the Red Rover. I had worked so hard, my fingers to the bones. And they thought that I had I took leave without permission. And they were going to court-martial me. And they asked me if my work was worthy or not. Now, you are the members of this committee. Now, I gave you a little bit of background of my work. I remember one soldier. I remember one soldier, he was laying there in his cot just before I went down. And I asked the surgeon, I said, could you check this young man? Is that man dead? And the soldier got out his stethoscope and he listened to his chest. And he pronounced the young man dead. And I told the surgeon, I said, that makes one more baby. If it had been a year earlier, I wouldn't have been able to say anything to the surgeon. But the soldiers, when I first started, they didn't like us very well. But as we started and kept helping them and nursing them back to life and giving them some soup and helping them to feel better, they were glad to see us. You are the committee. You are the committee that will make up the surgeon's mind whether our work is worthy or not. We did our best as volunteers, and then they hired us as a nurse, and they kept us, even though we couldn't read or write. So I hope your decision is favorable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Stokes. Marlene, that was inspiring, passionate, and really, really great storytelling. Just painting the picture, setting the scene. Speaking of painting the picture, did you want to tell us what's behind you?
Well, I painted when I do my storytelling. I can visualize the character I'm doing.
Sure.
And there's maybe one likeness or a couple likenesses of her that people believe that is her. And this was one, and the picture of her wasn't that good. So this is my interpretation of what Anne may have looked like. And she is in the hull. If you I get this correct, she's in the hull of the ship right there, and if you can, in the middle, there's guns. The Red Rover was fully able to defend itself. It had a 32-pound gun on her. The soldiers, if she was under attack, whoever was able would be able to get a gun and help defend her. The nurses had gauze over all the windows. The windows were opened up, and so that the breeze would come through and that the smut would not bother the soldiers. And so when she first went aboard the Red Rover, it had just been retrofitted from a barracks. The Red Rover was built over in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, just across the Mississippi River from Illinois in 1859. And in 1861, she was captured on Island 10 near New Madrid, Missouri, by the USS Mound City. The USS Mound City was built in Mound City. And so they towed her onto the island until she could be patched up and towed to St. Louis, where she was retrofitted. The retrofitting was started in St. Louis and then brought back to Cairo and then to Mound City, where it it was finished, and she was the state-of-the-art hospital in those days. She was the first Navy hospital ever. And the prior to becoming part of the Navy, she was operated by the Army. And there were 5 African American women that worked aboard her in 1862 from April on. And in January of 1863, she was officially turned over to the Navy. And Stokes and Graves, Mattie Perkins, and the other ladies were the 5 women initially that started to work on the Red Rover as a Navy nurse. And then there were others. There was like a total of 15 contraband that worked above the Red Rover. That is where Anne met Gilbert Stokes. She married him shortly after leaving the service of the Red Rover, October of 1864. And she married him and moved to Belknap, Illinois. And she had 1 child and 2 stepchildren. So she lived her life out here in Southern Illinois. So that's just a tidbit.
Oh, sure. No. Brings me to questions. If you don't mind, we've got a couple questions coming in, and I've got some questions too. One of them. So if you do have a question and you're watching out there, first and foremost, as it's scrolling across the screen, go ahead and write it in the comment section. So Ms. Stokes, Marlene could answer these questions. Stacy, thanks for watching tonight. Stacy has a question. She says, what made you want to represent Anne Bradford Stokes, Marlene? What motivated you to represent her?
Well, I had started doing other characters like Harriet Tubman, York's mother. In 2008, I did Elizabeth Keckley. Then in 2012, which is 150 years since the Civil War, there was a commemoration that was being planned at Fort Massac. And they wanted somebody from the area, if possible, to represent Southern Illinois. Anne came from Rutherford County, Tennessee. She moved here to Southern Illinois. She made her home here, and this is where she is believed to be buried. So I started researching her and looking at other people's writings about her, and being able to see some of the notes that the Navy had wrote where she was part of the staff, and I could start seeing her develop in my mind as this strong individual, maybe not someone that is going to be very talkative, but very observant, very knowledgeable of how to care for the sick and the injured. She had a kind of a thick skin. And so I felt that she was very worthy of our remembrance of her. And the fact that she's Illinoisan, she adopted this place and she made it her home.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're sharing her story. You know, everyone has and deserves, their story to be told. So it's It's really nice, as
don't deserve it.
okay. Stacy commenting back and said, "Thank you for sharing Miss Stokes' story."
Thank
Um,
you.
so,
Thank you, Stacy.
yeah. But I mean, it's an important story to tell. So um, I'm glad you were able to tell it to us tonight. Appreciate that. Nancy has a question. Nancy, you kind of touched on this a little bit. You said that she met Gilbert Stokes, married, had children, lived her life out in Southern Illinois. But anything else you want to share about Ann's life after the war? Did she continue to, work as a nurse or in a similar profession, or anything else that you know of?
It's unknown whether she continued to work as a nurse, but most farm women, um, they are everything to the whole family. They're caregivers, they're cooks, they do the laundry, they chop the wood, they skin the rabbit or the raccoon or whatever. And she lived that of a domestic here in Southern Illinois. But she married Gilbert, and he died in 1867, leaving her with their child, but also with his two children that she continued to take care of. And then she married in 1867. She married a man by the name of George Bowman, and um, it's he lived north of the Grand Chain area, and she also got her mail from here in Grand Chain. I thought that was very interesting to have that connection to the town in which I live.
Sure.
And so she George died, and she had some friends, and those friends uh, tried to help her get her pension. They they wrote affidavits telling about her character and so forth, but she was denied a pension. But in 1890, um, the census showed that she could read and write. In 1890, in the military records, you'll find that she put in for her own pension, and they tried to put her down because they wanted to say that she was a man. And um, she told them that she was a woman and that she was asking for that pension on her own work. And so they reviewed it and went through the laws, and they found no reason for her not uh, to get a pension, because she was listed on the roster as a nurse and was being paid as a nurse. And she got the pension that every white person was getting at that time, which was $12 a month. And she got $12 a month until 1903 when she died.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Nancy also says, "Wonderful. Thank you." Commenting back. A question you mentioned, census records, figuring out, where she got her mail. As a historian, I think, some of the most fun, when completing research is, the hunt and, finding out all of this information. So I'm curious, how did you complete your research on her? Did you visit like a bunch of different museums, libraries, archives, other places within the community? And how long did it take to complete your research? And maybe it's still ongoing too. I don't know.
It's still ongoing, I would say, first and foremost. Um, for is picking up different tidbits here or there. But I'm fortunate in that I have friends still with the Forest Service, people that are archaeologists and specialists that allow me to use the big government research engines. And sometimes I would go over to the local college and get on the college computers, or go up to SIU and get on theirs. So I can catch a minute here or there, by being a domestic myself, and I can look up different things and add it to what I've already put together, and sometimes it just makes for a little bit more interesting story.
Sure.
So that's what I do.
Sure. Use those resources, those people That's right. Yeah. Stacy has another question. Does Miss Stokes still have family in the area? Any descendants still around that you know of?
I have been trying to authenticate that. There are some Stokes still in the area. There's Bradford still in the area. But we have not been able to determine whether they are in fact the Ann Stokes that we're looking for. Because in the Mound City courthouse, you will find Ann Stokes listed down there in the marriage records. And so, but I'm not totally sold that it's the right one. Sure. It could be a child that it could have been one of the stepkids. So I haven't been able to find Gilbert and Ann together with the names of the three kids. So I still got to play with that a little bit.
Sure. The search continues for sure. It's always ongoing. It never stops.
For help.
Yeah. Hey, asking Ann here. We might have time for a few more questions. This might be one of the last ones. But what do you hope people remember after meeting you this evening?
Well, I believe Ann, there should be something here in Southern Illinois to commemorate Ann. She's the first woman, whether black, white, or indifferent, that from the female side of things, that got her pension. And I was fortunate enough to go up to the Navy Pier up there in Chicago, and they got a National Museum of the Navy up there. And as far as the Red Rover, they have just a small little area that talks about the Red Rover. The Red Rover was dismantled in 1865, the winter of 1865, and sold for scrap. But it was the forerunner to the Navy's nurses that served for our country over the years. So Ann deserves more than a footnote. She deserved for people to be able to pull off the road somewhere, and to at least do a few 2 or 3 minute plaques that they can read about her, and maybe even go on down to Mound City and stand on the bank and think about the noises that you might hear in Mound City when the town was bustling with over 2,000 people bringing the pig iron out of Pope County down to Mound City and wrapping the ships so that the bombs or the shots wouldn't go through the hull. She fought for her pension herself. In her older age, she learned to read and write, and she learned that the importance of education. There's so many things that we can learn from Anne, and it's not just one thing. And she's Illinois' daughter. She adopted Illinois, and we should adopt her back. I believe that the whole state should commemorate her. Now, that's my opinion.
I mean, it's a phenomenal story, you know. It's and like you said, just she deserves some commemoration, even if it's just a historical marker or this or that, or eventually hoping to get the whole state to have some more commemoration, or yeah, and then also to know that the Red Rover doesn't have that much commemoration either. It'd be nice to see that too, since it's such an instrumental piece of history. That ship being an artifact itself, a historical artifact.
But
I was curious about that too. I was wondering what happened to the ship, but you said it got dismantled or scrapped.
Yes, it was. She was dismembered, and so, I've traveled the state, and I've seen what finances can do to help certain areas. For instance, there is a Confederate cemetery north of Moline area, and you got John Deere, and you got all these beautiful places because money flows into those areas. But wouldn't it be nice if we had some groups of people to get together and do some brainstorming to bring some recognition down here to this part of the country that served the United States, served the region, served Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
During that period of war. It became the turn of the Civil War. Mound City helped to turn the tides. And by Vicksburg falling, it definitely completed the task. And then in Vicksburg, the USS Carroll, that's where it's housed. But very little is here in Southern Illinois, and we need to figure out how to bring something to Southern Illinois. It deserves it.
Yeah, it's such an important piece of history, important piece of the country, in the country's history, and to it shouldn't be forgotten. I mean, that's why we're here tonight, is to continue to have these stories told so they're not forgotten, and continue to live on, and hope that those who've tuned in tonight feel a little bit inspired, by Ms. Stokes' story, and you too, Marlene, and continue to keep the story going. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Any final words from you, Marlene, Ms. Stokes, to share with the audience tonight?
I just hope that each person found something that they can grab a hold to and take with them from tonight, and maybe it inspire a passion within them that they would want to partner up and figure out how to do it.
Sure.
How to bring about a little change.
Right.
And brought about a little change.
Yeah, we always say when we do these programs and these events, we could inspire or spark a sense of wonder into 1,000 people or a dozen people or just one person, and for all it takes for it to be worth it is just that one person. Stacy commenting saying she's definitely inspired. Thank you. So
Nice to meet you, Stacy.
yeah, so we got Stacy inspired. Thanks for tuning in, Stacy. Hopefully more of you out there were inspired by Ms. Stokes' story, Marlene's portrayal of her. Continue to have the story live on. I want to thank you all for tuning in, especially a huge thanks to Marlene tonight for joining us virtually all the way from Grand Chain, Illinois. That's the beauty of this this pandemic. If there are any silver linings out there, is the opportunity to work with and meet people from all over the state, all over the country, all over the world. And I'm glad we had the opportunity to meet, because it's sometimes the distance, the geography between people is a little bit of a barrier. But now with all of us being more online, more virtual, we're able to connect. So I do appreciate that. One other thing I did want to mention too, I want to thank Illinois Humanities again for partnering with us to put on this program tonight. And I did want to remind you, and as promised, Illinois Humanities would greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide to them. So I am going to post that survey link here again, and please complete this short survey. It only takes about 5 minutes of your time. They take these surveys seriously so they can improve programs and program offerings for the future. So continue to have stories like Ms. Stokes' story continue to be told. For everyone here at the Museum of the Grand Prairie, I want to thank you again. Hope you all have a good night, and until next time, until our next virtual program. Thanks.
I have one question.
Sure.
Are you offering this with a video link for people that didn't get to see it?
Yes. So this will. This program, it's being broadcast right now on our Facebook and YouTube page. And once this program is over, this whole portion was recorded. It's what Facebook and YouTube are doing for us automatically here, and it'll be stored on our Facebook and YouTube pages, the Museum of the Grand Prairie.
Okay. All right. How do we get the link to your?
I can send. I'll send them to you, Marlene. But anybody out there watching, if you just wanted to visit our museum's Facebook or our YouTube pages, all you gotta do is search Museum of the Grand Prairie on YouTube or Facebook, and you should be able to find us and then find the video that way too. But I'll send the correct links to you, Marlene. So
nice meeting everybody.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Good night.